Hello, everyone, and welcome to this week's edition of Talk of the Town. This is Steve Putnam here again this week, but I've got someone on the show that I think you're going to recognize, but we've never had on the show before, but it's a name that I certainly recognized, so let me introduce you to the farmer's wife, Miss Catherine Hamrick, and I think that's probably how most people in Cleveland County know you, isn't it?
Yes, I've been called the farmer's wife, and my husband is known as the farmer, and our youngest son, of course, is known as Baby Miles, and so, yes.
I know we were just talking about all this before, before the show started, but it's interesting for me to have you here today and talk about this because, as most folks may say, well, the farmer's wife, I know that sounds familiar. It's because you were a weekly established tradition in most of our lives in Cleveland County for about 30 years, weren't you?
Yes, I wrote for 30 years, except for several maternity breaks, and I began in Boiling Springs in '74 for a little community paper, the Foothills View. They had a column, a fishing column, and I approached the editor and I said, I think the women should have a column. I'll write one on homemaking. That was Diane Holland. She said, oh, sure. But the very first column I wrote, I couldn't get serious about homemaking, and people liked the humor, and so I wrote for the Foothills View, then the Cleveland Times, owned by Fred and Rosie Watson in Shelby.
Right.
I wrote for them for 4 years, and then in '83, Ted Hall, who was the editor, invited me to start with the Star, and I wrote for them 20 years.
Wow, that's amazing. And see, that's the part I remember. I remember opening the paper each week and reading the article from the farmer's wife. And you read something in the paper and you're like, gosh, does this person really exist? Are they really here in the county? But you grew up and lived here. These stories really did reflect what was happening in your world, didn't it?
Well, yes, but I did not grow up here, and I did not really think I would live here. I grew up in the town of Spencer. It's a railroad town.
Oh, absolutely.
And at Wake Forest, I roomed with a girl from Cleveland County. And so at her wedding, after we had graduated, they introduced me to my husband, Klein. And they said, now we're sure you're going to want to go out with him. And he has a degree in agriculture, and he works at NC State. And I thought, not for me. And I was not interested in agriculture. And so a few months later, he called and he said he had tickets to the Wake Forest State football game. I said, well, I can put up with anything long enough to go to that football game. And I've been putting up with it for 45 years. So I didn't grow up here. And part of the reason that I started writing was because I was a city girl and not from Cleveland County. And we began having children, 4 boys, one after the other, and I thought, I just can't believe what's these things and these people. So I started writing humor.
We all have that. We all have these days when we're looking at this going, if I just write this down, I could make $1 million. Or if I just had that on video, I could win the world's funniest video prize. But because we all pass through this, but you so eloquently wrote all of that down and just made us all laugh but we're laughing because it happened to us.
Yeah. And really that's part of the real goal that I had underneath all of my writing was that life really is good, and the everyday experiences bring us a lot of joy. And I was always hoping that by sharing the smallest of things that happened to us and pointing out the humor, I loved it when people said, that reminded me of the time that my grandma did this, or my husband did this. And so it really is about the joy. Yeah, it's really to celebrate the joy of everyday life, which is all around us. I was just one of those that managed to write it down.
Yeah, and you wrote it down, quite well, and you wrote a lot of it down. I mean, you've really got a lot of memories wrapped up in all of the stories because, again, you've had one that you completed, pretty much per week for 30 years, didn't you? From '74, you said, to '07, to '04, you were, this was something that you did, sort of chronicling these events in your life.
Yes, and I look back on it, and as we were saying, some weeks it was very easy because my husband had done the most unbelievable thing, or my children. I just knew what I was going to write about. Other weeks, the deadline would be approaching, and I would think, what? But there would always be something. I always came up with something. Obviously, some were better than others. And this book does have some of the classics, some of the ones that people enjoyed, that I knew they enjoyed, and that, that were special. And some of the columns basically were just adequate for the newsprint that week. And
Right. Well, and I know you were talking about the book here. That's really one of the reasons you're on the show today, because you have gone back through, the time in the archives and so forth, and pulled forward, sometimes not easily, because this was all in different formats and stuff throughout that you've saved it in over the years, so it's taken quite an effort, and brought those things forward and compiled them into this book. Tell us a little bit about the book.
Okay, well, you're right. The book, I'm indebted to my friend Darlene Gravett. She's retired associate provost at Gardner-Webb. She insisted that I get my paper columns together and do this book. She insisted and took me to Wild Acres and really made me get started. It was really an arduous process to retype all of those columns into Microsoft Word. And so that took about 4 years, and I created a spreadsheet, and I would write down, this one is very good, or this one is weak, or this column is dated, and so when I finally I have 1,253 columns,
Wow.
675,000 words. That's 100,000 words less than the Bible. I Googled it. I had so many to choose from, and I said, well, I know I want one about each child. I want some about farming. I want some about some of those things that are key things in our lives, and so about my mother, and I began selecting those, and then I would think, but this is a good one. And I have about not quite 100 in here, and as I read it, when I got them all together, I said, a thing that I like about it is that I felt like the columns did tell our farm family story. You see the progression from young, optimistic farmers, and then as we lost the farm and went to work and moved on and then had grandchildren. So it does sort of tell a story of a farm family, a Cleveland County farm family, of
right, I
which
was
there are
gonna say.
very few.
Right.
Left.
You're right. That is it, and I think it is a unique perspective, maybe because of that. Because I have talked to a lot of people that said, growing up there were just farms and farm families there, and it's becoming a more rare. So the rarer that becomes, this window into time that you've created really becomes that much more special.
I hope it does that, and because the family farm, except for certain niche farming is disappearing. I said we were so fortunate. We got to farm, and we got to quit farming in the same lifetime. But we had a dairy farm, and those who milk cows know how tied down, how hard my husband and children, how hard we did work and to make a go of it.
Yeah, because unlike a lot of other, where the seasons sort of, come and go, every day there's a regimen that has to be followed with the dairy cows. Every day. I mean, and that dominates your life, doesn't it?
Yes, it does.
Yeah, but it also makes for a lot of things to write about, too.
One of the favorite columns that people always enjoyed was the one I wrote about the names that my husband gave his cows. That's a classic. That's a favorite. I can't say some of the names on air, but but they're farming terms, and people enjoyed that a great deal.
Well, I know they could probably bleep it out, but we probably shouldn't go there. So. But that's it. So now, I know the book itself, it's actually just recently become available, hadn't it?
Yeah, Wes Westmoreland printed it, and Randy McNeely did the cover for me, and it came out the 1st of December, and I'm very, very thankful for the support I've received and the book has received. I was adding up today, and it looks like we sold over 700 copies before Christmas. And of course, I'm going to continue to publicize the book and
Right.
put it on Amazon and
Right, because this has just been available locally.
locally
for now, hasn't it?
primarily, and then
Right.
through my website it can be ordered that way. I've appreciated the fact that people who don't know us have reported back they enjoyed the book. I'm glad that a lot of men enjoy the book. There's a lot in here about trucks and tractors, and a lot of men have enjoyed the book, and some younger readers, and that has meant something to me as well.
Yeah, I think it is. I think it's one of these things that is going to have sort of a timeless feel to it when people read it, and because it's that glimpse back into that time that we may never experience again, but ultimately it's a glimpse into family, and you're going to get family moves forward, the concepts, and so I think it really is going to stand up well with age and time. Now, I know that there's going to be some folks that are sitting here saying, okay, you've talked all about this thing. Where can I get a copy of this book? Because I've read our article for 30 years. I want to know where this book is. So how could people get a copy for themselves?
They can go to one of the locations. There are 4 in Shelby. Let's see, the Arts Council has sold a lot. The bookstore Got Books out near the Waffle House. The Senior Center, both in Shelby and in Kings Mountain, carries the book. In Kings Mountain, the museum, the Depot, the Southern Arts Society at the Depot has the book. In Boiling Springs, I'm indebted to the florist, Boiling Springs Florist, and Boiling Springs Hardware, who have carried the book. And there are a few other copies. McNeely Photography in Shelby has several. So there's several places, but on the website, it can be purchased through PayPal, or people can mail me a check. The cost of the book is $20, and with shipping $22.75, and they can order it by mail. P.O. Box 524, Boiling Springs, 28017. So I've received some orders that way. It'll be a lot easier when I get it on Amazon.
There you go. Well, fantastic.
And that'll come real soon. Maybe by the time this airs, it'll be on Amazon.
Could be. Well, I would really like to personally thank you for coming on the show today. It's a pleasure to meet you, and pleasure to finally see the face right in person that entertained me for so many years in the column. And I know that people are going to be really interested in this, and I really appreciate all the candor that you've had over the years, pouring yourself and your family's life into the columns that we've so enjoyed.
Yeah. Well, thank you. I asked my husband. He's quite a character. I said, well, now, Klein, you know what? You really need to sit down and read my book. He said, Catherine, why would I? I lived it.
There you go.
So
there you go. What else is there to say?
Yeah, that's it.
Well, thank you so much for being on our show today.
Okay, thank you, Steve.
And thank you for being here with us so far, but don't go away, because we've got more Talk of the Town right after this.